Greetings, maniacs, New Englanders, and everyone else tuning in. As I've become aware, actually, a lot of you are not from New England, so maybe I need to have a more inclusive greeting. Although the channel was intended for Mainers, I am going to try to tailor my language to be more universal or global. I can't speak for the universe, it's vast. But I guess I'll try to be more globalistic in my language. No, I don't want to be a global entity. We need diversity and individuality. That's a different topic. What? November 7th election and what it means for the state. Primarily, where my heart has been the electric grid. And this is big in Maine, but the first article I'm going to read is actually a national poll, an article about a national poll. And I'm not going to give an overview. It's all going to be about question 3, question 1 subsequently, because of how it's trying to prevent question 3 from going through, making it a legal battle, which I can understand why they would want to make it a legal battle. CMP and Versant don't just want to roll over, but publicly owned utilities, as Nebraska has proved, has a lot of benefits to it, and we need to dig into it. So that's what we're going to do tonight. Well, it's tonight for me. It's a late one, to be honest. I was just on the podcast that's here. I'll also include that here. I'm going to keep promoting that for a little while. It was my first ever podcast. It was with Pod Squad, Pods with a Z Squad, here on YouTube. And they're on major platforms everywhere, including Twitch. So check them out. They're a lot of fun. I had such a blast tonight. That's not what we're here for. That is why I'm up late. But since I'm up late and I've been working third shift, but got switched back to first shift, but because it's late, I got my second or third win. So I'm awake now. And you're going to want to stay awake for this too, because it's going to impact everyone. And so as Maine goes, so goes the nation. And I think that's going to be important here. So, starting off, we're going to read from Maine Beacon. Maine can lead the way. National poll shows strong support for public utilities. This is Dan Newman on November 1st, 2023. As Maine voters get ready to vote on question 3, a ballot initiative to replace Central Maine Power and Versant with a consumer-owned utility, a new poll of voters nationwide shows broad support for publicly owned utilities. According to a recent nationwide survey conducted by Data for Progress, a progressive think tank, an overwhelming 68% of potential voters favor the idea of a publicly owned utility serving as their provider. This support transcends political affiliations, with Democrats showing a 71% approval rate, Independents at 66%, and Republicans at 67%. That is above majority and straight across the board. Advocates nationwide have called for transitioning toward more public utilities, establishing utility providers that give the public a direct say in decisions around energy policies. Data for Progress policy analyst Catherine Fraser and Aunt Grace Adcox wrote about the support for public power. The poll also found that a majority of voters, 60%, report that their utility bills increased in the last year. In recent years, extreme weather events made worse by climate change have exposed weaknesses in the reliability of electric grids and power supply in Maine and across the country. Fraser and Adcock said, these disruptions have led to skyrocketing utility bills and increased scrutiny of the reliability of the grid, as well as an over-reliance on fossil fuel energy sources to provide electricity. All eyes will be on Maine on November 7th, when voters will decide if they want to replace CMP and Versant with the Pine Tree Power Company, a nonprofit statewide consumer-owned utility that would be governed by an elected board. The election has been called the definitive fight of 2023. On the climate front, the Pine Tree Power campaign has drawn backing from prominent national climate organizations like the Sierra Club and Bill McKibben, an American environmentalist and author who sees putting utilities under democratic control and removing profit-seeking as essential to speeding the green energy transition. Yet, despite the strong national approval and prominent supporters, Question 3 in Maine look to be a toss-up at the moment. Independent polling by the Climate and Community Project in October showed the race in a dead heat, with 37% of respondents saying they will vote yes on Question 3, indicating support for a consumer-owned utility, while 37% said they will vote no. 25% of those polled by Climate and Community Project said they were still undecided. Organizers with the Pine Tree Power campaign take this as a positive sign. They say that despite getting massively outspent by political groups funded by CMP and Versant, which have poured over $37 million into the race and flooded Maine voters with television and online ads over the last year, sowing doubt about a statewide consumer-owned utility, as well as an opaque and extensive social media influencing campaign. There is still a real chance of winning next week. This speaks to the power of the idea of a public control over utilities, they say. Investor-owned utilities like CMP and Versant are lining the pockets of shareholders while bleeding customers dry, allowing countless outages and lobbying against clean energy. This isn't working for anyone, Pine Tree Power campaign manager Al Cleveland said. Recent polling shows that a switch to consumer-owned utilities is a popular solution that Maine can lead the way. So, that is from Maine Beacon, once again, Dan Newman, fresh off the presses. Oh, actually, there is one more that I wanted to read before I put my cell phone down. This one's pretty long, which is good, especially when it comes to these decisions, because the more information, the better. Yeah, so let's just get into this, because I'm honestly the what is the saying? The wicked, there's no rest for the wicked. Well, and while the wicked are doing their thing, good people have to be watching those wicked people. So I see you wicked people, and you're keeping me up. So while I'm up, I'm going to do some reporting. Mind you, at this point, if my eyes are red, which I think they are, I've put in some eye drops. It is 1:48 a.m. and I got up this morning at 4:35 a.m. after I hit snooze. So I've been up almost 24 hours. So this is important to me. I do want to rest, but my heart palpitations because of my podcast that I was just previously on, and with everything that's going on here in Maine, until November 7th, I don't know that I will rest that well. All right. Mainers may see electric bill relief by Tux Turkle, the Maine Monitor, from Bangor Daily News, which I paid for, and I am still waiting for a newspaper. And it is definitely processed by this point, so I'm going to have to look into that. Again, this is lengthy, so I may have to stop. And actually, before I start, Let me take a sip of water. After enduring record high electricity supply rates this year, most Maine households will start seeing some welcome electric bill relief in January, based on recent declines in other New England states and projections by Maine energy experts. Some New Hampshire utility customers already have seen supply rates drop by nearly 40% over the last year. They've slid a similar amount in Massachusetts. In Maine, experts are anticipating a drop in the 20% to 30% range, which would still bring us like 10 to 20% above, if not more, from where we were like a year ago, mind you. Just keep that in mind. I know in the political field, a year ago was like 10 decades ago, but it did happen just recently in our lifetime. So if you can look back at old electricity bills, I mean, they've been going up increasingly. So that's like Walmart pricing their stuff up in July, in August, September, especially October. So that way, come November and Black Friday, they can drop them just to regular prices. Some New Hampshire utility customers have seen supply rates drop by nearly 40% over this range, which would cut rates that now stand at roughly 16 cents per kilowatt hour by a nickel or so. My expectation is something in the 11 or 12% range, said Andrew Price, President and Chief Operating Officer at Competitive Energy Sources in Portland, which helps commercial and institutional clients negotiate contracts. But we'll still be north of 10%, I believe, he believes. For context, an average Maine home using 550 kilowatt hours a month at 16.6 cents per kilowatt hour is now paying $91.30 for its energy supply. How are our bills so much more than that? Like in the hundreds. If the rate falls to 11 cents, that would lower the charge to $60.5, a monthly savings of nearly $31. The precise levels will become clearer beginning November 7th when the Public Utilities Commission kicks off a new procurement process for selecting winning bids for 2024 standard offer service. That's the default supply for the 9 out of 10 home and small business customers who don't contract for power with competitive energy providers, and it represents the biggest and most volatile part of a household electric bill. On November 7th, the day we vote, but this has nothing to do with voting, Public Utilities Commission kicks off a new procurement process for selecting winning bids for 2024? Shiesty. These rates for electricity supply are separate from what distribution utilities such as CMP and Versant charge for delivering power to homes and businesses, although they include the monthly bills people see and are passed on to suppliers. Supply rates make up roughly 60% of an electric bill. They don't include CMP and Versant's delivery charges, which account for around 37%. Neither CMP nor Versant generate power. They only distribute and transmit it via substations, poles, and wires. Do you know how electricity is generated? Fossil fuels. For reference, this year's standard offer supplies are New Brunswick Energy Marketing. What? For reference, this year's standard offer suppliers are New Brunswick Energy Marketing, a subsidiary of Canada Provincial Utility New Brunswick Power, and Next Era Energy Marketing, part of Florida-based Next Era Energy Resources. Maine, we are a siphon. They are taken from us in every direction. They want our electricity. We need to take this back. This is so shiesty. Maine's rate drop is expected to be more modest because other states, such as Massachusetts, seek separate bids that straddle winter and summer months, and the price differences reflect higher or lower seasonal demand. Looking at the forward prices for wholesale energy contracts over the next couple of years, price sees an overall trend for costs that are lower than sky high 2023 benchmarks, keeping an eye on global events. Also, Iberdrola got sued because they were controlling the electric bill here in Maine. I'll include that link down below. It's just, it doesn't end. Oh, and BlackRock also is one of the parent companies of Iberdrola. Or investors, I guess investors. So it's all becoming apparent. Global events have sent Maine's electricity supply rates on a roller coaster ride since 2020, fueled largely by price volatility for the natural gas needed to run many of the region's power plants. Plummeting energy demand during the pandemic slashed standard offer rates to about 7 cents per kilowatt hour in 2020, and roughly 6 cents in 2021. But a year later, Russia's invasion of Ukraine roiled natural gas markets and caused rates to nearly double. This year, the lingering impacts pushed standard offer rates to an unprecedented 17.6 cents per kilowatt hour in CMP's service area, and more than 16 cents in Versant's Power, Bangor's district, before a mid-year adjustment at the Utilities Commission trimmed them by a penny. Ooh, thank you. Maine's Utility Commission negotiates standard offer rates in November to take effect in January for the following year. As would energy markets begin readjusting last winter, wholesale gas prices fell sharply. Experts expect to see that trend reflected in the 2024 electricity supply rates. One near-term wild card, though, is whether the fighting in the Middle East spirals into a wider war that directly involves oil-producing nations, such as Iran, and ripples into the liquefied natural gas markets. Also, the USA is a huge provider of gas, and we're exporting it all, but we could be keeping it. Everyone's a little on edge about what's happening in the Middle East, Price said. Maine's Utility Commission conducts its bid selection every year around mid-November. After Hamas militants invaded Israel on October 7th, it was too late to adjust the schedule, according to Philip Bartlett, the commissioner's chair. But the agency already planned something different to hedge against sudden spikes in wholesale energy markets. This year's bid selection is unusual in that it will be split into 2 sessions, roughly 3 weeks apart. The Utilities Commission will select supply bids for the residential and small business customer classes on November 7th and 8th, first for Versant and then for CMP customers. On November 7th and November 8th, when we're voting, I guess they still have to conduct business as usual, but the timing, it kind of just seems like a slap in the face. Like if they had done it last week, this week, when I'm filming, it seems like a slap in the face. Like, hey, we're going to win and we know it, so put the crown on our head now. And I don't like assumed winners. It's not cute. But it will pick winners for only half the annual customers' demand on those dates. On November 28th and 29th, the process will be repeated for the other half. We hope that by spreading it out, we don't get stuck with a particularly bad day, Bartlett said. What? It's like they want to space it out for more clicks because it'll allow them more views than doing it in one lump sum. My videos get lengthy. That's because I'm not trying to get on individual clicks. Maybe I'll make shorts from these videos to advertise. There does take work. There does take some money in getting your channel monetized, getting your channel noticed. I'm not going to act as if I didn't do those things. But any aspiring YouTube, any hobby at all, it takes some money, it takes some investment. And so to me, when I see this, like we hope that by spreading it out, we don't get stuck with a particularly bad day, Bartlett said. So like if what's a bad day for you? Like, or what's a good day for you? A good day for you sounds like a bad day for me. So I would much rather the bad day come from your part. And yeah, so I'm sus. Studying stability versus volatility. The distinction between supply rates and distribution rates is sometimes lost on frustrated customers who may blame the states to investor-owned utilities when their bills take an unanticipated jump. If perception matters, the timing of the Utilities Commission deliberations may be especially notable, according to William Harwood, apologies, sir, the state's public advocate. The commission's process will kick off on election day, just as voters are considering question 3. Just as we're distracted and we've been focusing on something and you're doing something else behind our backs while telling us about it 10 days beforehand. The ballot initiative asks if they want to buy out the CMP and Verson assets to create a public transmission and distribution company. Although CMP and Verson aren't involved with supply rates, Harwood said he wonders if the prospect of lower overall electric bills might influence how some voters feel about the takeover campaign. Although they aren't involved, I wonder how it will feel. Yeah, everyone's going to want lower bills for Christmas. They're just they're twisting us. The utilities get the bulk of the criticism when prices go up. They might get some of the credit when they go down. The sharp price swings in the standard offer supply rate have policymakers debating the value of stability. At issue is whether customers are better off with an annual bid process that reflects the highs and lows of a market at that moment, or if it makes more sense to stagger the bids for longer or shorter periods to achieve more stable rates over time. A legislative resolve earlier this year directs the Utilities Commission to study that matter, but the results won't be ready before next month's bid selections. That's a letdown for AARP Maine. The advocacy... Okay, it is getting kind of late. Maybe my mouth won't work quite like I want it to. The advocacy group worries about the impact of price swings on seniors living on fixed incomes. This approach, AARP Maine wrote to the Utilities Commission in early October, does not appear to reflect the recently adopted resolve that calls upon the Commission to develop a standard offer procurement policy for residential customers that will reduce the volatility that we have experienced in purchasing generation supply for 100% of the load at one point in time. Harwood, the public advocate, has similar concerns. A consultant hired by Harwood's office recommended that the commission solicit standard offer bids for half of the 2025 customer demand for the homes and small businesses during next month's process. Rate stability for most consumers is more important than accurate price signals, Harwood said. They want stability so they can plan their budgets. Bartlett said the legislature's late adjournment last summer made it impossible to study changes by November. He agreed that a multi-year procurement strategy is worth considering, but cautioned that even if 2024 standard offer rates fell by 30%, they were still relatively high. We're still in a historically very high rate environment, he said. How much of those high rates do you want to lock in long term? This stuff is all loaded. Let's read some comments. The Maine people might see some relief on the power bill because they want us to vote for them. And maybe the people will forget how bad they are price gouging. Fair? Won't believe nothing they say till it's reality. Meaning the relief? Yeah, heard. A little relief before the election would be perfectly timed by the Spanish and Canadian companies. All right, these are all getting likes up. I'm reading from Newsbreak, and I'm liking these. Oh, this is from Mechanic Falls as well. Oh, I just said it. If we believe this, we'll believe anything. Once they stop subsidizing solar and wind and EV from ratepayers, the prices will go way down. What I want to see is the delivery side of my electric bill go down. My last bill, the delivery cost side was higher than my electric use. Uh-huh. I still say that CMP and parent companies should be reinvesting their huge profits they make back into the upgrades in their infrastructure rather than asking for another rate increase, making the ratepayers paying for the upgrades. If they insist that the ratepayers pay for the upgrades, which become property of the utility, then the ratepayers should have stock in the company and receive dividends, just like their stockholders do. Accurate. It's that word again. May, not the month, that abstract term that could or could not happen in the foreseeable future, leaning heavily on the won't. So that's just a pulse of Maine. And that's what we're thinking. So that was a decently written article. Again, that was by Tux Turkle from Bangor Daily News. I'm done with my phone here because I may split this video up and record in 2 separate sessions because if I can't get my mouth to work, then I'm not going to keep reading. But that being said, I would like to take a day off from recording and be outside and enjoy nature and take my dog for a walk since I have vacation. But November 7th is right around the corner and I am terrified. That's not true. I have faith, I have hope. But also, CMP and those that be spent $37 million on propaganda to get us to believe their particular way. So, before I get into what I want to read next, it's all about Nebraska. Why Nebraska? Well, because Nebraska is the only state in the US that has publicly owned utility. So, I'm going to read this short article first, and then I'll get into some more. I do have a Reddit article. That's just because it's the pulse. I want to get real people, not the facilitators, not the journalists, not professionals. I want to get the pulse of real people and what they're thinking, other individuals like myself. So, this is from Your Energy Partner, OPPD, Omaha Public Power District. Omaha is in the capital of Nebraska. So, this is on their official page, included below. You may have, well, okay, from Maine, we're not going to, but go along with it. You may have frequently heard OPPD referred to as a public power utility, but you may not know what that means or why it matters to you. Our customers receive many benefits from being part of a public power utility, including lower energy costs, more involvement opportunities, and more transparency in the work that OPPD does every day. Why public power? Because it really is best for you. The cost savings of public power. The cost savings of public power. I don't know why they have it written the way they do. Approximately 1 in 7 electricity customers across the U.S. are served by public power utilities. But Nebraska is the only state where residents receive electricity service entirely from public power utilities. Wow, as a result, that's like Pinky Girl. I don't think I said her name right. As a result, Nebraska residents enjoy some of the lowest rates in the country. The average public power customer in the U.S. pays approximately 12% per kilowatt hour than investor-owned utility customers pay. Being goofy. With the average American consumer about 900 kilowatt hours per month, that adds up to quite a lot of savings each month. Investing in communities. Another major benefit of public power utilities is that they are an active part of the community they serve. Utility employees and management are our friends and neighbors, and board members are elected from the local community by members of the community. The people in charge of setting rates and developing strategic policies are experiencing the effects of those decisions alongside their fellow customers. Public power utilities also invest roughly 27% more of their electric operating revenues back into their local communities than investor-owned utilities. In a public power utility, members of the community have access to a board meetings and have multiple opportunities to provide input on different utility decisions and projects. This provides the community the chance to be actively involved in what happens with their power utility. As a result, OPPBD is more responsive to the needs and desires of its customers than an investor-owned utility would be. Anything's better than CMP. OPPD is also one of many organizations involved in the Public Power Mutual Aid Network. In the event of some storms or other large-scale outage events, these public power utilities will send employees from their utility to help communities rebound and restore power. OPPD, I need to stop, has benefited from this partnership following events like the windstorms in June 2027 and June 2021. Crews from Nebraska, Iowa, and other parts of the country came in to help OPPD restore power as quickly as possible. In return, OPPD has dispatched crews to locations including New York City, Louisiana, and Mississippi to help with outage events and natural disaster recovery. The mutual aid and response to these large-scale outages showcases the spirit of public power utilities and their investment in local communities. Southwest Power Pool. Oh, it's late and I'm just having fun. In 2009, OPPD joined the Southwest Power Pool, SPP, which encompasses 95 utilities from Texas to North Dakota and the western part of Montana. SPP helps facilitate collaborations among utilities along this power grid to optimize assets between utilities and to be able to provide reserve power during both planned maintenance outages and adverse events. SPP also allows utility members like OPPD to sell their wholesale power to other power pool participants. This wholesale electricity market has enabled the reduction of electricity costs by more than $3.5 billion since 2020. Whoa! There are many benefits of OPPD being a member of SPP, including lower energy costs to customers and being able to diversify energy sources. And there's a bunch of links that they include. I did click on one. Okay. Yeah, definitely worth 1 minute and 58 seconds to read, which is what this not public. I got that word stuck in my head. Text to speech. I have something that can read to me. It helps me study, and that way I don't have to keep looking at the screen all the time. I can use my ears instead. So this was a link that I clicked on from OPPD website. It takes me to oppdthewire.com. So I guess this is their newsletter, and it's called Your Utility, 5 Facts About Public Power. This is from October 2nd of this year by Julie Wasson. Public power is a unique part of living in Nebraska. The state is the only one in the country where residents get electricity from public power utilities or cooperatives. This week, October 1st to 7th, is Public Power Week. In recognition, here are a few facts you may not know about the public power utilities. Affordability. Public power customers enjoy electricity rates averaging 11.6 cents per kilowatt hour. compared to investor-owned utility customers who pay an average of 13.2 cents per kilowatt hour. And there's a nice little graph. Large presence. Public power utilities represent 60% of the electric utilities in the United States, serving 1 in 7 Americans. Nebraska has 166 public power utilities and cooperatives. Nice. And then there's a nice more graph. 2011, public power utilities provided electricity to 49 million people in 49 states and 5 U.S. territories. It has an asterisk, but I don't know where that leads. So find out for yourself. No, I'm just kidding. It doesn't actually indicate. So, yeah, find out for yourself, I guess. Local control. Customers of public power are also their utilities owners. All public power utilities and cooperatives are controlled by boards of directors with this system, Nebraskans. Elect individuals who are ultimately responsible for setting rates and strategic policies. Have access to open meetings conducted by the governing authorities of the state's utilities. Have multiple opportunities to provide input to decisions made by the local utility. Commitment to community. Employees of public power utilities are your neighbors and friends, and they call the communities they serve home. They work to strengthen economic development in their communities and bring new business and jobs to the state. The utilities also make, in lieu of tax payments to the countries they serve, money that goes to fund local governments and schools. In 2018, OPPD paid $32.9 million in such payments to conduct in its service in its territory. Reliability. According to data released in April 2018 from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, EIA, Nebraska's 2016 average electrical customer outage duration was the nation's lowest. Excluding major weather events, that duration was 27 minutes. The nation's highest, West Virginia, was 6 hours. Even with major weather events included, Nebraska still ranked the lowest in the nation, as shown in this graphic below. Again, a nice graphic. Check them out for yourself. They are good. I'm not trying to... Actually, I am trying to promote this, not sell this. I'm not a salesman, but I am trying to promote this. Public power is a unique part of Nebraska and a tradition that has electrified the homes of residents from large cities to small homesteads. It is a commitment to the state and the people of OPPD proudly serves. Again, by Julie Wasson from The Wire. OPPD Wire. All right. I think that's going to be all for me tonight. I am stumbling over my words at this point. I want to be coherent, and it's 2:18 my time. I will probably dress in exactly the same clothes tomorrow, so you may not even know that I didn't do this all in one setting, although the sun will be up unless I do it after dark. So we'll find out together because by the time I film this, you're just going to be strolling along, streaming along, and it's going to roll into the next video. No need to say greetings because we are just continuing on from where we left off yesterday. As you can see, everything is exactly the same, and you probably can't even tell when I filmed one video and when I filmed the other half. That's how seamless it is. So we're going to pick up where we left off. We're going to switch over to public power in New Mexico quickly. I know I said it was all about all about Nebraska, but I figured that throwing in some other opinions from another state would also be handy. There is a lot here. I'm probably not going to read all of it, but it will be included because, again, there are a lot of nice graphs. I will say, I guess the one thing that's different is the audio. You get a lot more sound with it, so I'm going to have to be careful with my P's and S's. I might have to get something to help with that in the future. So, we'll dig into that with New Mexico. From there, I want to get into Nebraska's community-owned electricity system. which is by Thomas Hanna, and it was written back January 14th in 2015. But I think that's good because this goes back to when they were starting, and then we can kind of have a follow-up from Reddit. It's not any kind of reference piece. This isn't meant to be like, hey, because this is said in Reddit, this is factual. That's not it at all. What it is the fact that you get the pulse of the people, the actual opinions of those ratepayers from another state. And as someone that's not a politician, as someone that's not fluent in a lot of this, that wants the best and the cheapest rates for my family and my community because that's just best overall, I think that this is really handy. And again, you can take it or leave it, but I will include it. So to go back, we've already read a couple articles there. So we're going to first go over to Public Power New Mexico. What is public power? And this is from their official .org site. So it was written by a group. Public power utilities are community-owned, not for-profit electricity utilities that safely provide reliable, low-cost electricity to more than 49 million Americans, in contrast to the investor-owned utility, IOU. IOU. I don't want IOUs. I mean, unless they're to me, I'm not writing IOUs. That's so interesting. Investor-owned utility model, IOU, in which a private company holds a monopoly over electricity in their service area. Publicly owned utilities do not exist for the purpose of shareholder profit, but rather to serve the local community. Most public power utilities are owned by cities and towns, but many are owned by counties, public utility districts, and even states. Again, some really nice graphs, which just help break it down. There's not an easy way for me to communicate that. Investor-owned utilities, IOUs, like PNM, EPE, and SPS, have a fiduciary duty to their shareholders to make as much money as possible. I will admit I don't know those three acronyms, what they mean. But if you're viewing this, you probably very well do. If you do, please leave a comment below where I can look up more things about that. My audio's great, but my camera, lacking. To raise rates, to discourage energy efficiency, to choose expensive generation sources that will yield higher guaranteed returns on capital from ratepayer and minimize expenses like customer service, repairs, upgrades, and innovative investments in the grid. Public power boards are responsible to safeguard the values and welfare of the public. Seriously, I need this to focus. Okay. Now refocus back here. There we go. Public power ownership is not a new concept. More than 1 in 7 Americans are served by a community-owned electric utility, ranging from small entities like rural co-ops to large municipalities like Los Angeles Power Authority, to the entire state of Nebraska. Public power ownership is a proven driver of lower rates, increased reliability, and clean energy implementation, and can take many forms. What are the benefits? I'm not going to read into all of them, but I will read the first paragraph and then the highlights. A public power alternative would allow municipalities and tribes in New Mexico to own or contract with generation facilities to serve their communities, and could allow the state to export energy to growing markets in the West through a publicly owned grid. The revenue potential for local governments and the state is significant, but revenue is not the only benefit of public power ownership. Locally owned, affordable, reliable, innovative, invested in the community, environmentally responsible, and a proven driver of economic development. Let's end with that one. Public power generates local jobs and local revenue through the generation and sale of energy for its customers. And if a state owned grid exports energy, revenues can flow from outside the state to contribute to New Mexico general funds. Electrification and renewable portfolio standards in the California, Nevada, and Arizona will potentially increase the demand for energy from solar and wind generated in the Southwest in the next decade. And New Mexico is uniquely situated to capitalize on those opportunities. We only have to decide that we want to ensure New Mexicans benefit from those sales instead of PNM, EPE, and SPS shareholders. I'm going to guess they're like our CMP and Versant. That's just a guess, however. And it goes on. Again, I'll just read some highlights. Have we done it before? Yes. The City of Santa Fe Water Authority, Renewable Taos and the Kit Carson Electric Co-op, Picuri's Pueblo Solarization, Public Power Models to Learn From, Nebraska, Winter Park, Florida, Silicon Valley Power, California. This one to me is particularly interesting because Silicon Valley, all the tech giants, what are the tech giants doing? I want to know because oftentimes they're very much looking out for themselves and their highest profit. So, what are they doing? Silicon Valley Power, SVP, a 600 MW vertically integrated, owning generation, transmission, and distribution assets, publicly owned utility and vertically integrated that serves 55,000 customers in and around Santa Clara, is an island of efficiency surrounded by PG and E territory, with an average of 66 minutes without power per customer compared to 170 for PG&E. Even as SVP provides more reliable service than its neighbor, its rates are about 40% lower. SVP ranks second place in the nation for green power excellence from the U.S. Department of Energy. Interesting. So Silicon Valley's doing it. Okay, so they were number 3. Number 4, Maine. Yes, a coalition of Maine citizens called Our Power Maine was formed to promote the creation of a community-owned pine tree power company to take over electricity service in Maine after the IOUs, Versant and Central Maine Power, owned by Avangrid, have failed to provide reliable electricity despite charging exorbitant rates. A bill to approve the public utility passed the legislature in 2021, but was vetoed by the governor and is now being pursued via referendum. So there is more meat to dig into here in this New Mexican article from their government site. So I will include it, and I highly recommend that you dig into it. For now, because this video is already long, however, I don't want to not record things just because we need to fit it into a 27-minute loop so they can have 3 minutes of commercials, or you do 42 minutes for 60 minutes so they can have 18 minutes of commercials and whatnot. So that's not this system. You can choose to watch this. You can choose not to watch this. I feel that I am called to record this, and one way or another, I'm either going to read it or I'm going to talk about it. So I might as well record this and then do that for others so that they can draw upon this. They know where to go for their own research. And then they have a starting point where they say, hey, Drew had a lot of good points, but I really just, at my heart, don't agree. Well, let's use that as a starting point and move from there. And this isn't meant to persuade anyone to vote anything. I just want to compare that I'm an independent YouTuber just bringing light to things that are happening in our state when there is millions of dollars being pumped in, And our state is being persuaded by these IOUs, investor-owned utilities, and they're spending so much money. It's like a bully pushing me around. When I was young, like a bully pushing me around, they're not going to work out. Like, they're going to push me around because they're confident that they can handle me. If they suddenly feel they need to go home and start working out, well, the bully's going to pick someone else to bully, because a bully isn't going to work out. I don't know if this analogy is making sense. What I'm trying to get at is the fact that Avangrid and Iberdrola from Spain, they're spending millions of dollars to persuade Mainers to vote in their investor-owned utilities mindset, worldview, a favor. So that's a lot of money. So to me, it feels like they're threatened and that they are afraid and that they have a lot to lose. If they're willing to spend $37 million, they have a lot to lose, because they're no holds barred at this point. They're all in. They are attack mode. They are soldiers with swords drawn. They are ready. So I just want to bring light to the other perspective, because if things are looking like we need to focus in one direction, my instinct is to start investigating the other direction and see what they're trying to hide, or what maybe they're not even trying to hide, just what isn't being brought to light, what else there is out there. So that is my opinion on where I stand and how I investigate things. And I just think that helps as someone on YouTube, because then you can understand where I'm coming from and you can formulate your own opinion from there. So this is the Next System Project. Next, N-E-X-T, System Project, .org. Nebraska's Community-Owned Electricity System by Thomas Hanna, Director of Research at the Democracy Collaborative, January 14th, 2015. In Nebraska, 121 publicly owned utilities, 10 cooperatives, and 30 public power districts provide electricity to a population of around 1.8 million people, which is more than Maine. So if they can do it, Maine can as well. In the United States, there is one state, and only one state, where every single resident and business receives electricity from a community-owned institution rather than a for-profit corporation. It is not a famously liberal state like Vermont or Massachusetts. Rather, it is conservative Nebraska, with its 2 Republican senators and 2 out of 3 Republican members of Congress, that has embraced the complete socialization of energy distribution. In Nebraska, 121 publicly owned utilities, 10 cooperatives, and 30 public power districts provide electricity to a population of around 1.8 million people. Public and cooperative ownership keeps costs low for the state's consumers. Nebraskans pay one of the lowest rates for electricity in the nation, and revenues are reinvested in infrastructure to ensure reliable and cheap service for years to come. Quote, there are no stockholders and thus no profit motive, the Nebraska Power Association proudly proclaims. Our electric prices do not include a profit. That means Nebraska's utilities can focus exclusively on keeping electric rates low and customer service high. Our customers, not big investors in New York and Chicago, or Qatar and Spain and Calgary and Norway, own Nebraska's utilities. Payments, in lieu of taxes, from the state's publicly owned utilities exceed $30 million a year and support a variety of social services throughout the state, including the public education system. So they're not only helping with electric, like they're reaching beyond. Nebraska has a long history of publicly owned power systems dating back to the beginnings of electrification in the late 1800s. Initially, these coexisted with small private utilities. However, in the post-war World War era, in the post-World War I era, large corporate electric holding companies backed by Wall Street banks entered the market and began taking over smaller private and municipal systems. Using their financial and political power, these corporations dramatically consolidated the power industry in Nebraska and attempted to stop new cooperatives and publicly owned utilities from forming. During this time, more than 1/3 of the state's municipal utilities were sold to private corporations. Tired of abusive corporate practices, in 1930, residents and advocates of publicly owned utilities took a revenue bond financing proposal straight to the voters, bypassing the corporate influenced legislature which had previously failed to pass similar legislation. It was approved overwhelmingly, signaling both popular support for publicly owned utilities in the state and also the beginning of their resurgence. Led by powerful Nebraskan Senator George W. Norris, the driving force behind the publicly owned Tennessee Valley Authority, a series of state and federal laws were passed, including the States Enabling Act 1933, which allowed 15% of eligible voters in an area to petition for a decision on a publicly owned utility. The Public Utility Holding Company Act 1935, which forced the breakup and restructuring of corporate electricity monopolies, and the Rural Electrification Act in 1936, which provided financing for rural electricity projects. By 1949, Nebraska had solidified its status as the first and only all-public power state. I didn't realize that it dated back so far. I mean, it's hard to believe, but we are nearing 100 years of them doing this. So that is plenty of time to draw upon research and to have lots of understanding where others that have never been in that situation couldn't possibly understand. Local control and the possibility for democratic participation are defining features of Nebraska's publicly owned electricity system. At ground level, public utilities and cooperatives are run by publicly elected power district boards, cooperative boards, or elected city councils, often through appointed boards. These bodies establish budgets, establish service standards and policies, and set prices. Regularly scheduled meetings of power boards and councils are open to public involvement and comment. Should they wish, every Nebraskan has the opportunity to become involved in the decision-making of their local electricity provider. One such example relates to the increasing use and proliferation of renewable energy facilities. While the state remains heavily reliant on coal and nuclear sources to provide low-cost energy to consumers, interest in renewable energy, primarily wind, has taken off in recent years. In 2003, electricity consumers, many of whom drove more than 100 miles for the event, participated in an 8-hour deliberative polling survey for the Nebraska Public Power District, NPDD, a public corporation owned by the state of Nebraska that supplies energy to 600,000 people via local publicly owned utilities and cooperatives. The topic at hand was the potential addition of more than 200 megawatts of wind energy by 2010. 96% of the participants supported the wind project, with 50% agreeing it was the right size and 36% wanting it to expand, compared to just 3% who wanted it reduced. In addition to its other wind power facilities, in 2005, NPDD began operating the Ainsworth Wind Energy Facility, the nation's second largest publicly owned wind farm consisting of 36 turbines, generating up to 59.5 megawatts of energy. I'm saying megawatts, I'm guessing it's MW. In 2011, the state's energy plan acknowledged both that power generation from wind energy had doubled every 2 years since 2006, and that developing just 1% of the potential energy from wind in Nebraska would satisfy the state's entire peak demand. Moreover, public ownership of electricity generation and distribution in Nebraska is complemented by another seemingly socialist idea: planning. The Nebraska Power Review Board is a state agency that oversees the publicly owned electricity system. In addition to its regulatory functions, such as monitoring rate increases and arbitrating conflicts, the 5-person review board, appointed by the governor and confirmed by the legislature with party, occupational, and term limit restrictions, oversee the preparation and filing of a coordinated long-range power supply plan, as well as the location and construction of new electricity generation facilities. A common concern with public ownership of larger-scale systems is that it can lead to inefficiency, unaccountability, and bureaucracy. But Nebraska's nearly 100-year-old experience with a completely public and community-owned electricity system demonstrates that this does not necessarily have to be the case. The principles of subsidiary and local control can, in fact, be preserved through the networked mix of publicly owned institutions at various scales without sacrificing efficiency or service quality. Of course, public ownership alone is not a fix-all solution. It does, however, provide an opportunity for a community, a city, or even a whole state to become actively involved in economic decision-making on important matters affecting their lives, their environment, and their future. So, I like everything I read. I did kind of stumble over the part where it said, moreover, public ownership of electricity generation and distribution in Nebraska is complemented by another seemingly socialistic idea: planning. I'm not a socialist. I'm a capitalist. I understand businesses needing to make money. Businesses. But utilities, something that individuals rely upon for human fulfillment, for even just general, for first world amenities, which as an American country, as America as a country, we are, seemingly. So that means that utilities, I do not see those necessarily as the same as a business. And I'm going to include YouTube and even Twitter, X, in that, because those are utilities that we as a society rely upon at this point, like it or not. So it is branching from a corporation into a necessity: water, electricity, shelter. Those are necessities. I know YouTube and Twitter may not sound like a necessity. However, when you are cut off from those things, either from posting and joining in to a global community, a global communication arena, it's debilitating. And so it's different, but it is the same. So it did hang me up there. I also don't like how the elections of the elected board happen. I thought that we the people, and this is Nebraska, in Maine it can be separate, but this is also just off the cuff reading this, what I'm thinking. The Nebraska Power Review Board is a state agency that oversees the publicly owned electricity system. In addition to its regulatory functions, such as monitoring rate increases and arbitrating conflicts, the 5-person review board, which is appointed by the governor and confirmed by the legislature with party, occupational, and term limit restrictions. So, in a sense, we the people elect the governor, we the people elect the legislature, that then in turn elects the board. In Maine, I would like more control. I would like it, and maybe it's complicating things. I'm trying to think through this as I'm saying this, so maybe it's complicated. Having a democracy is complicated. To think otherwise would be naive. So, of course, it's going to be complicated. So, yes, on that note, of course, it's complicated. I did think that was a pretty good article by Thomas Hanna. And now we are going to move into the world of Reddit. Reddit has a reputation like Wikipedia. I will say Wikipedia is more regulated than Reddit. Reddit is just individuals. Of course, there are guidelines that need to be maintained, but this is more opinion. This is opinion based. Although you will often get facts and references mixed in. But again, this is just to get a pulse for the people. I don't regularly come on here. I think this was by Figment 1979. The state of Maine is considering a consumer-owned utility like what you have in Nebraska. Could you please give me your honest opinions on what you like or dislike about your power company? Excuse me, wow, okay. Resident of the state of Maine here, in November we will be voting statewide to consider forming a consumer-owned power utility to replace the two somewhat privately owned ones we have currently. Central Maine Power and Versant Power. My understanding is that Nebraska currently has a model very similar to what is being considered here. He did have asterisks privately owned, and what he meant by that is Central Maine Power is owned by Avangrid, a company whose majority shares are owned by Spain-based Iberdrola. Versant is owned by Enmax, a company owned by the city of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. There is a lot of talk on both sides, and CMP and Versant spending millions of dollars advertising to try to get measures to fail for obvious reasons. CMP is on record as having some of the worst customer service of any electric utility in the country. The group in favor of the proposal, called Pine Tree Power, has some state politicians leading the charge on it, and they're basically running on a fuck CMP platform with a whole lot of ideas but not a ton of concrete figures at the moment. Are you happy with your power companies in Nebraska? What do you dislike or dislike about it? Thank you in advance for any and all opinions. This is from Big East Cat. It's absolutely positive. It's absolutely positively 110% the way to go. Not only do we have reliable power, but OPPD and NPPD provides awesome jobs for people. Example, Texas was going through a cold snap and their entire power grid went down, killing multiple people. Beyond sad, tragic really. At the same time, it was close to record lows up here. For whatever reason, me and my buddy decided to drive out in Chadron in the Panhandle via Highway 5, and our power lines along the highway were being serviced by NPPD the whole time, like proactively being examined and maintained to ensure the power stayed on. That's the best example I can think of that shows the difference between publicly and privately owned power companies. People take pride in working for OPPD and NPPD. They're fantastic jobs and can lead to a happy retirement and or a bunch of other career paths. We have a city council member who was an OPPD electrician for quite some time. Guys get their journeymans and do their own thing, and the city and the state are absolutely better because of it. And ultimately, the money stays here with the people. Oh, yes. Okay. I mean, I just read this. I'm not saying he is telling the truth. I'm not saying that this is gospel, but I am saying that was an opinion, and it was the first one that came up. So it's been upvoted the most. So let me see. There's just a couple that are just kind of small little things. Okay, so from Tasty Fish, every time the subject of kilowatt hours comes up with my coworkers, all of them live on the coasts, Their jaws drop at how cheap our electricity is compared to theirs. I'm a huge fan of consumer owned utilities now. Eaglesman 17. As someone who works for a public power utility, I feel it is one of the better things about Nebraska. With public power, the consumer is prioritized compared to the shareholders because there are no shareholders. I feel we are at a point in time where electricity is a basic human necessity, and keeping costs low is a priority for most of those utilities. Every bit of profit is supposed to go back to the company, which in theory it does, but some will inevitably go to the higher ups' pockets in the form of bonuses. Overall, Nebraska has benefited greatly from having public power utilities and keeping costs low and having a better infrastructure than most private utilities. And that is at my core what I believed. And hearing this, it's reaffirming. It's great. This is from Statement Round. It's great. Not a penny is ever spent on billionaire owners' salaries or paying a nice bonus to the board of directors or shareholders. Its actions are ultimately controlled by the legislature, which we, the people, control. So this is... let me see if I can see any dissenting views. No, I only see positive affirmations. Do it, Maine, 100%. Here's from an employee. Moisture 0101. OPPD employee here. Everything we do is about making the customer experience better and as cheap as possible because we aren't seeking profits. Because of this, we are able to do some cool things that I can't disclose yet because of an NDA, but some nice stuff is coming down the line over the next few years. A lot of the stuff that's happening may happen a bit later than privately owned utilities, because that's only because they raise prices to offset the losses where the public utilities try not to. Over the last decade, OPPD has only raised rates twice and has never will use demand-based pricing like Texas, which causes huge bills when other people's powers go out. Public power really is the best way to do it. You'll get the lowest rates with people trying to do what's best for the community rather than the people trying to make money off of you. Yeah. So this is just, if I kept scrolling, because this is a pretty popular. That's not the word I was looking for, but it is popular. So there's a lot that's been mentioned about this, and it's working well for them. So that's kind of feedback that I want. Because here in Maine, we have so much propaganda coming at us in the form of I keep saying billions, millions of dollars, and that's concerning. So just hearing a dissenting opinion or from people that have done it another way for almost 100 years, yeah, I have some questions and some setbacks, but I really don't want shareholders anymore. And Mainers in general, I don't think we want shareholders anymore. We don't want to be paying all this money for it to then go overseas or even north of us to pay these companies vast sums of money so that they can sit on a happy pot while we are suffering. So no, I've heard a lot of things, and I want to believe that the people that are speaking out for CMP are doing well, doing so for good reason. But after all my research, I have to believe that public power utilities are the best thing for Maine. This is my personal opinion. Take it for what you want. That is where I stand. And I will include all of this research in the links below. And I thank you for sticking with me, because this is a longer video, but as I said, it's important. There's a lot to get into. There's a lot that I didn't even read, but I will include it so you can dig in. As of filming, this is November 5th. I'm either going to have this come out later tonight or tomorrow. I'm not sure. Um, but November 7th is right around the corner, and what we decide decides the future of our state and how the nation goes. So I really hope that everyone is conscientious and educated in how they vote this year, because it's going to be pivotal. Once the election gets over, this referendum ballot, I am going to be moving into some other things. I already have some philosophical videos that I've been working on and wanting to get out, but didn't want to cloud um, what was happening with the election. So look forward to some new and great things coming. And until the next video, y'all have a great night.